My name is Maya Whitfield, and I still remember the exact pitch of my sister's voice when she called to say our father had died in his sleep, because at that very moment he was 3 feet away from me, dunking a biscuit into his coffee and complaining that I'd bought the wrong brand of jam. I pressed the speaker button without saying a word, watching his eyebrows rise as Denise's voice filled the kitchen, coldly informing me that the house, the truck, and every last dollar now belonged to her and her husband Trent, and that my name had been struck from every document that mattered. It had all started 11 months earlier, when our father, Walter, slipped on the icy porch steps of his home in Millbrook Falls and shattered his hip so badly that surgeons had to rebuild it with titanium rods. I was working a 16-hour rotation as an ICU nurse 2 states away when I got the news, and Denise, always the one who lived closest, volunteered so quickly to move in and help him recover that I never once questioned her motives. Within weeks, Walter had signed a temporary power of attorney, so Trent, a small-time contractor with a habit of chasing get-rich schemes, could manage his bills while he relearned how to walk. And I remember thinking how lucky we were to have family nearby who could step in. That gratitude curdled slowly, though, as my phone calls started going straight to Denise, who always had some excuse ready. Dad was napping, Dad was in therapy, Dad had dropped his phone in the bathtub, and they hadn't gotten around to replacing it yet. I shipped him a new phone as a surprise for his birthday, and 2 weeks later, Denise casually mentioned that it too had been lost, this time somewhere between the pharmacy and the car. When I flew home for Thanksgiving and saw him in person, I barely recognized the man who used to chop his own firewood at 71 years old. He had lost nearly 20 pounds. His hands trembled around his mug, and when I asked to see his bank statements, he glanced nervously toward the hallway before mumbling that Trent handled all of that now. The moment I pushed harder, Trent appeared in the doorway like he'd been listening the whole time, accusing me of trying to stir up drama during the holidays and reminding me that I was the one who'd left town for my career while they were the ones doing the real work of caregiving. Dad squeezed my hand under the table and quietly asked me to let it go for now. So against every instinct I had as both a daughter and a nurse, I swallowed my questions and flew back to my hospital shift with a knot in my stomach that never fully loosened. 4 months later, a former coworker named Priya, who now worked at Cedar Hollow Senior Living 2 counties over, called me out of the blue to say an elderly man had been asking every staff member on her floor if anyone knew how to reach his daughter, Maya. My hands were shaking before she even finished the sentence, because there was only one Walter Whitfield in the world who would describe his daughter that way, and nobody in our family had ever mentioned a nursing home to me at all. I drove 4 hours without stopping, and when I walked into that pale green hallway and saw my father sitting alone by a window, thinner than I'd ever seen him, but sharp-eyed and instantly recognizing me, he broke down and confessed that Denise had convinced him I knew exactly where he was and simply hadn't bothered to visit. The staff confirmed there was no diagnosis of dementia anywhere in his file, no cognitive decline, nothing that legally justified placing him there against his will, and within the hour he was signing his own release forms with a pen that trembled from anger rather than illness. The next morning, we sat across from an elder law attorney named Yolanda Reyes, and the numbers she pulled from his accounts made my stomach turn. Nearly $210,000 had been siphoned out over 10 months, funneled into Trent's failing construction company and a down payment on a lake house 2 hours south. Buried beneath the bank records was something far worse. A second power of attorney supposedly signed and notarized on a date when hospital records proved Walter had been under heavy sedation, recovering from a hip infection, meaning the signature on that document could not possibly have been his own. Yolanda explained that the fraud case would be airtight if Denise and Trent ever publicly acted on those forged papers in front of witnesses. And that was the spark that lit my father's extraordinary plan. He called his oldest friend, a retired funeral home director named Sal Ferreira, and asked for one favor: let Denise believe, without any paperwork or official record, that Walter had passed away quietly overnight, and simply watch what she did next. Denise's first phone call after hearing the news wasn't to a hospital or a coroner to ask what happened. It was to a locksmith to change the locks on the house before I could, as she later admitted, cause a scene. 2 days later, half the town packed into Millbrook Falls Community Hall for his memorial service, and Trent stood proudly at the podium, reading aloud from a will that left me nothing while my father stood hidden behind the curtain, listening to every word with Yolanda and 2 folders of evidence gripped tightly in his hands. Just as Trent finished bragging that the house and every account now belonged solely to him and Denise, the side door creaked open, and my father walked calmly down the center aisle in the same navy suit he'd worn to my mother's funeral 15 years earlier. The room fell into stunned silence as Denise's face drained of color, and Trent froze mid-sentence with the forged will still trembling in his raised hand. And my father simply stepped up to the microphone, looked at the empty casket, and said, "Funny thing about dead men. They don't usually sign paperwork," before Yolanda stepped forward with the medical records, the forged notary stamp, and the paper trail that ended the charade for good. Trent lost his contractor's license and was later convicted of financial elder abuse. Denise accepted a plea deal with restitution and probation, and my father moved back into his own home, where every Sunday now he still steals the last biscuit off my plate just to hear me laugh. And if this story moved you the way it moved us to tell it, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family, because we create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.